All right, I am here with Salyer McLaughlin. You are taking on a project about Frederick's history.
Mm-hmm.
Let's step back just a little bit and lead up to this project. Where did you start? And I mean, we don't have to go back to birth, but you know, certainly, how did we get here with Frederick?
Well, I was about 20 years old and I was living in Los Angeles. I had just gotten there. I was going to night school. I was going to UCLA Film School, and I got my first job with Warren Miller Ski Films. And I learned 16 millimeter photography and editing. We were cutting the old reels, and we would splice them together for dissolves.
Yeah.
And then soon after that, I got a job with Body Glove International. I was the creative director there, and then started developing television commercials and teamed up with a couple other guys. We started a production company called West End Productions. We were based in Manhattan Beach and then Santa Monica, and then up in Westwood. And we were doing a lot of fashion videos and commercials, and just developed a real interest in producing. And I was working with my partner, who's a pretty good director, who was a better photographer than I was. So he was directing, I was producing. And then I learned after a few years that really, the more creative one on the set is your directors, and that's what I wanted to do more than the actual administration of the project. So
yeah, the producer is the money person, right? Or handles the finance and the business end.
Handles all of the logistics.
Yeah.
More the logistics in terms of the
that's
actual
not fun.
production.
Or creative.
The director handles more of the on-set, the talent.
The vision, right?
The vision, the vision.
Yeah.
And if they can get involved in the edit, that always helps. And certainly if you can write it and direct it and cut it yourself, you're going to have a better project ultimately. So I learned all of that, early on. So as a result, I've been able to get fortunate enough to have some good projects where I've been allowed to, 100% totally create, write, direct and edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So this project, is this your brainchild, or is this a consortium of people who came together that wanted to do this?
I had the opportunity to recently produce a few other documentaries, one for Colonial Jewelers to celebrate their 75th anniversary in business, the longest running business in downtown Frederick. And in doing so, was able to do a lot of research on what happened to the downtown in the 60s and 70s. And that was quite successful. Everybody seemed happy with that. And the night of the premiere at the Weinberg, Rick Weldon was emceeing that. And Rick and I had not had a chance really to spend much time together since he took over the chamber. And he gave us a really nice introduction. And I called him the next day and I said, Rick, I'm really wanting to do a film about Frederick. Can you help me generate the support in the community? He at the time, and still is, part of this bagel group, which is Laura Fritz from the county and Kara from Downtown Frederick Partnership and Richard Griffith from DED. There's 5 of them, and Dave Zadelis from tourism.
Yeah.
So he had this group together, and I felt like if I could get Rick's commitment, that he could get the commitment of the bagel group behind it.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, I had been reading this book called From the Brink to Brilliant, which is Kate McDermott's book that Don Linton commissioned her to write. And after reading that, and I'd read several books. I'd read Ron's books and George Delaplane's books in connection with the piece I did for Colonial Jewelers. There's this fascinating history that took place in the 70s. And I felt like From the Brink to Brilliant really encapsulated like the most interesting parts of Frederick's history in a pretty short, it's a 120-page book.
Yeah.
And so I went to, Rick and I went to Don Linton and met with Don Linton and said, we want to option your book. Basically, we want to protect the rights to the book. We want to make a film about it. And Don and Kate agreed, and we signed an agreement with them.
So that's where we are at this point, right? So you
Yeah.
guys have kind of, obviously you have the book and you've got kind of the story, but it's now at the point, at what point? Where are we?
Well, we've raised a good amount of money from the Osherman Foundation and from the Delaplane Foundation and from the City of Frederick's Department of Economic Development, from tourism, and a handful of other sponsors. We have a fundraiser coming up on the 18th of April.
Okay.
Where we hope to gain a lot of financial support. We're going to be premiering a trailer that we've produced, a 2-minute trailer.
Okay.
That will give those who attend, a good idea of what this film's going to be about. But yeah.
So this event on the 18th is for people who are interested in investing in this film. Correct. And kind of seeing the first look at what's been done.
Right. The style of it.
Yeah.
And the story itself, like what.
Right. Where
there's a lot
how it's headed.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So where are you in the? Just guessing. Let's just say the event on the 18th is super successful. Do you feel like it can be the final funding can come from that event, or do you feel like you guys have kind of a plan over the next 6, 9, 12 months to finalize all of that?
I think as soon as we have this fundraiser on the 18th, the word's going to get out that it's a substantial project that could really do a great benefit to the city of Frederick, because it's not a typical documentary. We call ours a docu-film, but it's really more of a film. It's really a movie with real characters and real recreations and real reenactments. And the first part 1 of the 2-part series is set in the 70s, and it is from the point of view of a couple of newspaper reporters and photographers. And
wow.
In particular, one, Amos Brown, who was the first black photographer hired by the News Post, became chief of photography soon after joining the company. And he had an interesting perspective on it as the one who was in charge of all the photography that took place the day of the flood.
Okay.
There's also another a reporter there, Neil Sandler, who's been helping consult on the film, who will be a part of it, as will Ed Waters and Susie McNichols and Darlene Wiles and some of these reporters and photographers that worked for the paper back in the late 60s, early 70s, up to about right after the flood, 1977, which I believe was a time period in Frederick's history, especially when it comes to the downtown, when the vision was really set for what we're experiencing today. And
when in 1977 did that flood happen?
It happened in 1976 on
76. Okay.
October 9th.
I moved up here in 1977, so I was trying to think, I don't remember that. So in 76, the town flooded, and then...
Well, what happened was the town was already, because of a lot of volunteerism and this group of rebels, this group that really went up against the old guard here in Frederick with new ideas. So this vision actually was percolating back in the late 60s. George Delaplane, what he did with the newspaper, how they were able to save the post office and the county courthouse from leaving town. These groups decided to stay. George Delaplane was a big part of that. But so there was already this revolution that was happening in terms of how we're going to keep our downtown intact. Yeah. And then the Great Flood hit in 76. And it was because of that momentum that had already sort of gained ground. The flood didn't kill us. And because of Ron Young's vision for this Carroll Creek revitalization and the flood plan, and he was able to raise the $36 million that it took, that vision to create this outdoor entertainment center for the city, much like the San Antonio Riverwalk, which is where that was inspired by. They were able to make up the ground that they had lost with the flood, and actually use it to their benefit to then get to the full support of the county, state, and to get behind the flood project.
great.
Yeah.
How can people of Frederick, just typical everyday people watching this, how can they support this project?
Well, they could come and spend $45 and buy a ticket
Okay.
to the premiere of the trailer.
Okay.
And they could go to our webpage and they can donate money. It's tax deductible.
Okay.
All funds are running through our foundation, Big Blue Foundation, which is a 501c3. So
Excellent.
for companies and individuals who are looking for a tax write-off, it's a good way
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah, this is going to require a good amount of energy, a lot of resources, and a good amount of money
Yeah.
to complete because this again is a film. You know,
Yeah.
it's a film that's going to be shown theatrically. We have limited release with the Warehouse Cinemas, so have agreed to run it as well as all of our trailers.
Yeah.
And this will run in film festivals across the state of Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware, and then maybe nationally.
Awesome.
So it's going to run mostly theatrically, and then it will be also presented to Maryland Public Television once it's
Yeah.
finished. Yeah.
What is your hope to start actual production?
Well, we already have.
Okay,
Last Monday we started in Baltimore at the Baltimore Museum of Industry, which is an interesting museum, and part of that museum is a perfectly recreated print shop from the 1970s. So, because one of our central characters is George Delaplane, and the newspaper is certainly a big part of the story of Frederick, we chose this location to shoot our first scenes, which make up the majority of the trailer that we produce. So we've already had our first day of production. We casted George Delaplane, who looks a lot like him when he was 40 years old. But we'll be casting Ron Young and Don Linton and Peggy Pilgrim and some of these other legends that were part of the downtown scene back in the early 70s.
Are you guys still looking for extras? That's what people are going to ask me if they want to be in the film.
Oh yeah, so we're going to do a couple interesting recreations.
And I think this for people, I grew up here, been here since 1977, moved away and came back, but I've never even heard this history. So I think for people who are not Chris Hall, who's a great friend of mine and historian in Frederick, I think that this is an eye-opener. That, Frederick's history is long. I mean, we hear about it, the Civil War and all of that, but really to see it on the screen, I think is really going to be powerful and exciting.
Well, Chris is certainly, he's probably done more than anybody to raise people's awareness of the history of Frederick, and that goes back to 1745.
Yeah.
But what people haven't seen as much of is more their contemporary history, which is what our film deals with. So from 1945 on.
Yeah.
And there was this period of time in the late 70s, late 60s, early 70s, where the vision was set by this group of rebels.
I love that.
Who really are responsible for, what the town has really become in 2024. And people don't really know how that happened.
No. I can guarantee you, even those of us who live here probably don't.
And it's
even know
fascinating
much less.
because there's a lot of people live here. Our history books tell us, there were these rebels that that Frederictonians are fascinated by. Barbara Fritchie and even Daniel Delaney, who founded Frederick, was somewhat of a rebel. He rebelled. He rebelled the British Crown and came from Ireland here. So our roots are Celtic roots, which I don't think a lot of people know. But I mean, there's this kind of rebel spirit which has made Frederick what it is and why it's developed the way it has. And the Fort Detrick complex was interesting. That brought in a whole new group of people from around the world that wanted more interesting art and more interesting entertainment. And that was a big part of the growth of downtown Frederick. So there are these pieces, why are there so many artists here, musicians? What is it that originally attracted them? But I think it's this rebel spirit that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Frederick was not happy with the norms of the day. They were always seemed to be pushing the boundaries a bit.
Well, that's great, because there's those of us where the status quo is no go.
Yep.
So I think I fit right in with the rebels of the bagel group. I love it. All right, so the big stuff, you guys need to buy a ticket for April 18th, BOOMTOWN, the trailer premiere at Warehouse Cinemas. Buy, support, donate. Let's get this movie made and show the world why we love Frederick. And that's, I think it's great.
Yeah.
One thing you want everybody to know about this project for you.
Well, it wasn't the money. It wasn't the money that created this boom in Frederick. It was a renaissance in art that took place, a renaissance in creativity, and that's what the movie is mostly about.
Well, I love the foresight and the visionary, just really what people had so long ago, and I hope that continues. That's why I love this town so much, why I came back after so long, and it's for people like you, Salyer McLaughlin. BOOMTOWN, April 18th.
Yep, yeah, awesome. And the film will be ready in the later fall,
Awesome.
late fall of this year.
Let's see if I can get a role. We'll see you guys next time.